Welcome to episode 1 of the Frame Breakers podcast. And if there's anything that's going to completely break the frame of property management, it's going to be this inflection point when AI starts to actually replace employees. And it's not coming for everybody, but it is coming for some folks, right? Like that we prove that in this conversation with Reza Kesh. Reza Kesh is a guy with a PhD in applied sciences from Harvard. He has been deep into the AI thing, and he is a entrepreneur that has already scaled a $100 million business before, son of a real estate investor who just got fed up with the maintenance problem and decided this is the time. This is the time to deploy AI just full tilt against this problem that is plaguing the industry and completely break the frame. He's a guy with a supreme underdog mentality who had to just kind of fight his way out of getting out of Iran, where he was born, to Australia, and then had to fight his way out of Australia to the US by getting into Harvard, and a really, really compelling guy. We talk about how to really understand this AI revolution from a standpoint of, real expertise that Reza has. And we also talk about some very fundamental business building principles because of all he has achieved. Really great conversation. I'm glad that you're here. Enjoy this conversation with me, Pablo Gonzalez, Chief Evangelist of Vendoroo, and Reza Kesh, the founder and CEO of Vendoroo. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Reza Kesh.
Pablo Gonzalez.
See? How you feeling, man?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
Okay,
How
good.
are you?
Good. When I tell people about why I decided to drop everything I was doing and go full in on what Vendoroo is doing, there's always the guy that brought me in. The way that I describe it is Reza, our founder, is the son of a real estate investor who got fed up with the pain of maintenance, and as a Harvard PhD in applied sciences, decided he's going to go full ham at solving for maintenance because we're just not progressing the way it needs to be. How did I do there? Is that a good intro about you?
It's funny how life takes you back to where you came from, right? So you could go around the world and study everything. You're like, what was going on with my dad? That's like sort of pain. I think it's pretty accurate. I came from a background of my dad was in construction and he was a civil engineer. So, and then he got involved in a lot of rental, and then he did a little bit of HOA management. And then at some point, you keep hearing that nagging happen in the background. And at some point, I feel like you tend to go towards problems that you build empathy towards. And I was young and had a lot of fire in me, and I did try a lot of things, and I came back to the problem that was, I guess, closest to home. So yeah.
Yes. I also say, who also has already built a $100 million company? I throw that in there as well. So let's go to, I want to talk to you about AI, since you are Mr. Harvard AI guy. And then I also want to talk to you about how you actually solve this problem, because you have, I think you said it, you have 100,000 man hours invested in doing it right and wrong and different things. And then I want to just talk about business in general, but starting with the AI side. When you first mentioned, all these people are doing it wrong, they're all thinking about these generative solutions, agentic AI is the future, that pinged for me as, I didn't realize that we are now in a new era of AI. And everything that most people, the frame that they're coming from is that the AI that they're familiar with, which has already been really impressive, right? Generative. And now there's this agentic thing happening. Can you tell me a little bit about what the difference is in this transition? I describe it as generative is like a genie that you rub and it grants you wishes. Agentic is like the AI is the Terminator showing up to your house to solve your problems instead of trying to kill your family.
How'd I do there? Give me kind of like how you describe this new inflection point in AI.
Yeah. Let's go back to the inflection point
Yeah.
because I think, and I'm just gonna say this, the one thing that I almost like half vomit when I hear it, it's like AI is not gonna replace you, but it's gonna replace whoever doesn't use AI, right? So it's like the moment you realize, and when I was like looking into this stuff, I think people have to be, let's be super frank about the environment that we're in. And that environment is like people that are pretty deep into this stuff. VCs that have invested already maybe hundreds of millions of dollars into this do not have a super clear bet on what the future needs to look like. And so the moment when something's so new and people will piggyback off what is going to click bait versus like what is actually going on, you realize, oh my God, this is so much worth it to like just dig deep 3 layers in and understand what's going on, right? And so when I honestly started this, I wasn't sure if AI is the right, solution for this problem. Like, you have to, and even though I had the context of it, a lot of the generative models that you described are going to get incredibly better with time. And if you're doing anything on the Gen AI side, you really need so much investment that, you're really better off just kind of taking a back seat and allowing these open AI like companies building the tools that you need to build your Terminator and that agentic AI solution. But like fundamentally, so what I'm trying to get to is like the best of the best that I've seen in this space are still evolving and developing their thesis around this, let alone, 3 layers down or 1 layer down.
Yeah,
Like,
there's still the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator from Terminator 1, not the liquid metal guy from Terminator 2 yet. Right?
Yeah, for sure. But like even like how do we get there and what that
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
like?
yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay.
still what are the where is it going to cap out?
Got it.
TBD, right?
Yeah.
But
Total understanding of use cases and applications is still uncapped, uncertain.
uncertain, right? And so a lot of people I think are saying things just to not fall behind the race, but they're just not willing to put the work and do the dirty work to understand what actually needs to happen.
Okay.
And I think I am lucky because I never thought like some of the past stuff that I was working on would eventually come and be useful. So if someone's starting fresh, just imagine it takes 6 months to understand
Yeah.
these things 2 layers deep, and that's almost the amount of time you need to be out of any game, right? So, but yeah, I think you described it well, and I think fundamentally the difference between building a tool and building a Terminator is like, a tool is a tool. It can assist you here and there, and when you think about agentic, you're really talking about like the people that are doing the work, like so think about customer support. You could build AI agents that can help customer support people do their job better, make less errors and all that sort of stuff. Or you can build an agentic customer support, which can actually replace the person who's sitting behind it. Or in the property management space, you have software that's doing the work, or you can replace the person who's sitting behind the software that's, working with these PMS systems to do the work, right? There's not going to be a non-AI company in the next 10 years. And I think it's like those layers of how people build up to that is going to, is wildly different.
That's what I want to hear about, right? So like number one, there is a there's a wildly different understanding of what AI is and what it can do. Even the most advanced people don't fully comprehend it. There is the average guy like me that likes to read tech and likes to mess around with stuff, and I feel like I have a pretty good I have my own thesis on it. And then there's a guy that has, a Harvard degree, a Harvard PhD in applied sciences. That's doing this, building this, and an operator. You mentioned something to me yesterday, which was this idea that how you build it and how you fundamentally understand this thing from the ground up, from a
Yeah.
first principles level,
Yeah.
is the difference between building a Ford Fiesta or building a fully self-driving Tesla.
Yes.
Talk to me about just those nuances on the approach to build and how this isn't just, how this isn't just like, yeah, man, well, we're just going to start building it because the AI is going to get so good that everything's going to end up being equal anyways later, right?
So, it's interesting that you were saying that and I've given you multiple different examples of how to compare this, like cruise control versus autonomous vehicles,
Yeah.
right? Or like SaaS, or like tools to make SaaS better versus the person who's sitting behind the software. And I think the biggest differentiator, and I think this is what's missing in a lot of AI companies, even that I see, is that, it's not being an AI expert actually. It's being a human expert and then being an AI expert. Because then you need to break down a human before you could train an AI on how it needs to operate. And AIs today are fundamentally, have changed the way they operate that way. So I'll give you an example. So, when an AI used to form a sentence, it used to have to be able to be like, all right, well, what's the next possible word that I need to use in the sentence? And we'll go through 50 words. This is the next word, then the next word, then the next word, right? And so you could form a sentence, right? And most of the AI that was out there was not really doing well in that forming the sentences, or it took a lot of computational power. And so when you think about the AI today, how it works is that you're able to give it a whole document, and you're able to, what you call this idea of masking. So you're able to take, like, from this whole page, I'm going to take 3 words out, and you give that data to the AI. Then you give it another page and you take 10 words out. And what that means is that then you allow the AI to be able to guess what those words are. So you're teaching it context now instead of like letting it do the next guess. So why am I saying this? Is because this is where it gets challenging. To build an AI tool, it's relatively easy. So you need a bunch of data that is, structured in the right way, and you can build a tool to build it. When you're building an AI agent, you have to reverse engineer a human. Again, the difference is between I'll give you another example, like building or writing up textbooks for students versus raising a kid in school.
Okay.
So do you see how, like, fundamentally it's very different? Raising a kid in school is fundamentally different. So let's go use an example that's more relevant to property management, right? So when you talk about language models, and when you're talking about communication, you have to break down, if you want to build a humanoid agent and you want it to sound like a human. And why is that important? Well, you lose reciprocity if you don't have a human interaction. The moment people realize it's a bot potentially that's doing this, and we may in the future have to disclose that it's a bot, but but that fundamentally changes the interaction that people have with that, which fundamentally adds friction to the cycle, which fundamentally means that you need to bring humans back in, and then it breaks down the whole thing. Now, if I'm saying,
Hold on. I'm gonna on Harvard language break that down, right? Like, as you're saying, you have to reverse engineer human nature in order to truly build AI. What I heard from you is, if if you don't make it very, very human and make it undistinguishable from a human,
yeah,
you lose reciprocity, which means you add friction. To me, what I hear is, the moment that I don't, the moment that my brain clicks and says, I'm not speaking to a human, I immediately just become a selfish, demanding person that just like expects things to be done, versus I'm dealing with a business and I have a reasonable expectation of what it's capable of, and I'm going to be nice to it, and I'm going to expect things from a frame of rationality, as opposed to, oh man, no, give me this or I hate you and I'm gonna leave you. And
yes,
because we have no relationship here, you're just like a table. Like, I
cool.
don't care.
You push machines to your limit. Like, sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay, well, fuck. I don't want to like push this
Yeah.
too much because it's going to be like, I'm going to not push my engine too much because the cost is going to come back. But you would push a machine way more than you push a
Yeah.
human. And even someone like me who pushes humans all the time,
Yeah.
I still don't push a human as much as I
Yeah.
would push a machine, right?
Totally.
So,
And from the frame of the property manager
yeah,
that is already being dehumanized,
yes,
right, by their owners and by their residents and stuff like that, I hear, in the industry, it's just something happens, one thing happened, I get a bad Google review, I immediately lose a client. That's dehumanizing. Now imagine if you have an AI agent that isn't built from this like humanoid standard being responded to, it immediately triggers that person into that mentality
yeah.
of like, what am I paying for? Like, this is stupid. I hate this.
Yes.
You're not solving my problems, right? So like this idea of needing to trigger reciprocity,
Yes.
needing to trigger what makes us want to like be patient with each other, have a rational mindset, not expect too much, but like understand that we are working together on something, not like you're my slave or whatever,
Yeah.
is particularly crucial to interaction points with property management, and property management staff will already get triggered by that already.
Exactly. And so particularly in an industry that's all based on people and relationships,
Yeah.
that's even more important. But, and the challenge in it is like, we take a lot of the intuitions that we learn about being human. Like, no one knows what being a human actually, like, what does it mean? And people are like, look, the AI sounds really real because you're comparing it to the framework of but do you know that that's an AI? Well, you do know it's an AI, right? And so this is the standard that we can go to. Like, can you get to a point where it's really hard to tell that it's an AI? And that will fundamentally break things if you don't build that. So what is communication? Like, most people have not really thought about what is communication because you've learned that in little bits and pieces along the way. So now if you have to reverse engineer it and like try to get an AI to learn communication for your industry and and it's not as simple as, most people say, oh, well, I could tell ChatGPT just be nice. Can you tell it's a robot? You can. And so I think there's a world where we could really build these humanoid agents. And the beauty in it for me is reverse engineering humans because I love, as you know, like studying humans, understanding myself and how I've become who I am today. And reverse engineering that is like honestly the greatest therapy I've done. So this is like I love doing this work, and I can spend hours and hours in it. So it's not like, hey, let's plug this in to be an opportunistic. It's I think fundamentally you can build something amazing by building little humans. So
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so then let me dispel a couple of myths right now. I've heard that what really matters is the training data. This is a game of data because OpenAI and Google and Microsoft are all creating this large language model. So in order you're going to train it to be a human or whatever you're talking about, what I really need is just a ton of data and as much data as possible. Is that what's needed, or is it something else in order to get to this like humanoid level?
you need clean data. You need data that's structured in the right way, and the more you have, the better it is. But here's the thing: like, no one has the data. No one has it. Whoever says they have it is lying.
Why is that?
Because the data to evolve a student going to school and understanding how it's becoming an actual human, how it's becoming an adult, does not exist for these industries. That most of the data here is incredibly unstructured. Most SaaS, almost every SaaS company has not been built to be able to deal and collect this data over time. It's actually been avoided because you've had the humans behind the scene to fill in the gap, and so that data does not exist, and that is a challenge. And I think this is the right thing for humanity. I think it's the right thing for our industry. And I hope a lot of companies attempt to do this. It's like if we're building schools and we're building like adults, I want to help build more schools. You cannot be fundamentally against for education and be like, no, I want the only school here. No, I want but I think fundamentally the noise here, which is like, oh, I have a school tour, and I'm like, no, you don't. Like, what are you talking about? That's what bothers me because I care about education a lot. I care about schools a lot. I want more schools, but no one has the data to build the schools.
If we're going to make this analogy contextual to property management, what I'm hearing you saying is there might be a company with a ton of data, right? Maybe they have 1 million doors that they have data on. That is equivalent to having the biggest campus. You have the biggest campus, you have the most chairs,
Yes.
you might have the most television screens and projectors, and you might have a library. The person that's going to solve this is the person that understands how to train teachers to teach the students within that campus
Yes.
how to act in a way that will make them successful professionals.
Exactly. And the people that have done, the teachers that have actually done the work are disconnected from building the technology. And there's actually very few of them out there.
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge. Like it's
I just want to land this point then. So then
Yeah.
the thing that is truly going to help a property manager implement agentic AI as we know it, right? Like not is this idea of like fully replacing people and being able to trust it and trust your owners with it and trust your residents with it, trust your vendors with it, is the person, the team, the business model that figures out not how to not how to get the most data. That's like much more commoditized. It's much easier to go build a building.
yes.
Then it's more the person that's first to figure out how to train, how to teach a AI agent to sound the most like a human.
Exactly.
And the difference between like 100% human and 98% human is a giant gap of the person on the other side feels like they're being heard and they feel like they should treat you with respect versus the person feels like they can throw a shoe at you and not give a shit.
Particularly in a relationship business where like there's multiple personas, and if it's like 10%, like you're gonna have like 10% here, 10%. It builds up. So yes, that's exactly right.
Got it. So not all AI is built the same, right? Like some AI is built to help you do stuff. Other AI is built to completely take problems off your plate. And the difference is the teacher of the AI and who's going to do it.
The teacher of AI, how you're gonna, and there's so much detail. Anyone who's been in this industry
Yeah.
knows that there's so much detail in how to treat a work order, how to talk to a resident,
Yeah.
how to talk to, like there's so much nuance in talking to owners. There's so much nuance in talking to residents. There's so much nuance in talking to like property managers themselves, right?
Yeah.
Internally, how do you talk to staff? There's so much nuance there, and without that nuance that makes us human, I think the people that are like not in those details
Yeah.
are not actually building something. And shit will float with time. But
If I'm a property manager and I'm testing out a product, I'm looking at a couple of different AI solutions and I want to ensure that the thing that I assume that I can tell that this thing isn't a human if I take it for a spin and it just sounds like a robot talking to me. But if I'm talking to a company that's saying, no, 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 don't worry, we're building that. How do I know that somebody's really like, what's the test of saying, are you really going to solve my problem in the future here or not?
It's very simple. It's companies that are selling outcomes versus tools. Hey, look at this, because then we own it.
Then you have to
We own the outcome.
own
We're
the
like,
outcome.
We own the outcome. We're like, all right, this student was bad. It was probably because we did something wrong here. So we're gonna own the outcome. Versus, hey, this is an AI tool that's also able to do triaging and troubleshooting and vendor scheduling and this and that. No, own the outcome. And it simplifies everything, right? And we reverse back, and we do make mistakes, and we're like really upfront. It's not like we're perfect, but and so that is an excellent employee in my mind. If you hire a maintenance coordinator, isn't the best thing, the best you could do is try to hire someone who really cares and is doing the best, and they're owning outcomes. And that's what we're getting to, right? So, they're gonna make mistakes. We make mistakes, and we own outcomes.
On the outcome makes me think of Mark Brower, who we're going to have on the show, who is a guy that's like one of his key core values. And what own the outcome for him is the moment that there's a bad Google review, he's literally putting his phone number out on Google because he's like, this is the thing that I care the most about. So until this is solved for, I'm not okay. Right. So like I think when I think of a business model that owns the outcome, I think of someone that is it's as I built my last company, I felt the same way, right? Like I felt like there's all sorts of marketing agencies out there and podcasting agencies out there and consultants and coaches and whatever. Who is showing up to say, I want to be measured on on results without you having to worry about it. Period.
That's it.
Yeah. And so how do you build that, man? Like
This is great, because this is what happened, and this is how you pick who's the right person to build this. We were services, like, most of the stuff is services for a long time. And then what happened, when you look at software development, software development was really like a business mindset, the VC world, looking at the world and being like, I cannot scale services because I'm held responsible for the quality. How am I gonna, like, on the back end, how am I gonna build tools that's gonna make them a little bit more efficient, but I'm not owning the outcomes? And this is what's been happening with SaaS in the past like 20 years. And so this is fundamentally why SaaS companies are failing to be AI companies, because now it's not just like own the outcome, let's own the outcome. Culturally, you built a company for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years that is been running away from the outcomes and building efficiency tools for property managers. How are you going to culturally change every person in the company? You've been in our meetings internally. Look, it's all outcomes. It's like, we don't care. Like, we're not trying to, like, step back and forward. And, so it's like fundamentally, culturally, it's not everything is about technology. And I use this analogy all the time. There's so many pieces in building an amazing business and building something that's really useful for the world. And it's not just technology leverage or this leverage or that leverage. It's like, but one of the many things on top of technology is this outcome oriented culture that no SaaS company has. It's actually, they've run away from it to be able to be scalable.
Man, I don't think I've ever heard you say it that way, but it rings so true to me. When I talk to SaaS founders, tech founders in general, they are so obsessed with only doing things that scale that they're really building. But this was my issue with it. I felt like what they were building was just like the most impersonal businesses possible. That was like the glamour of it, right?
Yes.
Like, how can I do something with as little human interaction as possible? And I've always believed that in doing the things that don't scale is where the value gets created, and then that derives an insight that allows you to like maybe scale a piece or two, like sliver off of it.
Yes.
And you get enough of those insights and enough of those slivers that you create something that's like not just scalable but also completely unbeatable.
Yes.
Because you are so ingrained in the solution to the owner, to the person, the customer, the person that came to you with this problem to be solved, that they can never get rid of you again because you're so valuable to them. And
No one gets rid of a really valuable employee, right?
nobody fires a super valuable employee.
Yeah.
Nobody fires something that, like, when I'm a radical differentiation guy, right? Like, if I'm the only one that can do this for you, you are stuck with me, buddy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and
And by the way, we're not saying we're the own. I think, well, my viewpoint on this is like, there are like, from my experience, there's a lot of really good people in this industry.
Yeah.
That work for property managers. I think you could get close to the top 10% percentile, top 5% percentile. So that means that, you could do, you could provide a service that, maybe that's better than 95% of the situation. So provide a employee that's going to be the top, and that's pretty good. Like,
You're saying the agentic AI can give you an employee that is in the top 5% of your employees, an A player,
yeah, that's an A player.
an A player.
That's an A player.
And
And that's why I'm excited for, like, not just our industry, like the world having that.
Yeah.
Like, cause this, just building a business, that's your biggest cap, right?
Yeah.
Everyone who is a property manager today, if they had an excellent number two, they knew that they could keep growing.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental block in building anything, right? It's the people around it. Any cause
Yeah.
needs that snowball of humans. And that's why I'm excited. That's why, honestly, like, anyone in this space that wants to do this, I don't see this competition thing. I'm like, we're building schools to like do something that's better for the industry. So, we're all for it. Let's help them out.
when you say that, it brings me to my analogy, right? Like, I've always, like you, it bothers me when people just say banalities, right? Of like, oh, AI's not going to take your job. Someone using AI is going to take your job. I've refined it, thanks to working with you, to the idea of like, AI isn't going to take everyone's job, but if you were a B player and below, you're on notice. Right? Yeah. Like that to me is it, right? Like, you can definitely get B plus and above players based on these agentic solutions at some point in the next 2 years at most, right?
Yeah, depending on the job title, I think a lot of these job titles are going to be like,
Talk to me about company building, man. You've told me multiple times you've started all these different businesses, and the thing that you keep coming back to being super jazzed about is you think that you have the greatest assemblage of talent that you've ever had. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, as a company, you know this. We only hire ex-entrepreneurs.
That's what I was hoping you'd get to.
Yeah, so only hire ex-entrepreneurs, and it's like, there's a difference between being bold enough, trying to build something, and then getting humbled by the world. There's a lot of learnings there, right? And if you want to be part of a snowball, you've had to have that humbling experience to be able to have the opportunity to immerse with someone, because otherwise you're going to come in, be opportunistic, and want to do this, dedicate.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're building. We've opened our arms. We're like, let's allow entrepreneurs in.
Yeah.
There's better to be 10 of us than one of us. And I think the magic is like how we work together on that. So
Yeah, that's what hit me in our first offsite together. I was like, oh my God, everybody here is the next founder. And that's what really attracted me to come here, was this idea that, back to the original thing that we're talking about, everybody in this room at some point decided to own the outcome.
Yes.
And whether or not they were happy owning it by themselves, some people just decided, like myself, I'm like, man, I'm at the peak of my powers, but I love this mission. I love being on a team. I love, like the size of prize that we're talking about here in this giant context shift, right? Like that's meaningful to me, and the amount of impact that I can make. But working with people that have all at some point self-elected to own the outcome feels like a really big insight in building a team. And when I think about it from a property manager standpoint, that means, hey, if you want a social media manager, maybe you're not just like hiring somebody that wants a job. Maybe you're looking for that person that started their own agency. Maybe they're making a little bit of money, but offering, going of service, to be like, hey, you can still do that. You can still sharpen your skill set, but I can also mentor you in other things, and you can learn some more business by being here and not being worried
Immersion.
about
It's
immersion.
We never call each other by our titles or even names. We it's like partners. Everyone calls each other partners. Because we really view each other as partners. And I've honestly, even in the startup world, even going out to investors, they're mind blown about the team that we put together, because they've never seen 10 people that have been a founder and CEO before.
Yeah.
Now joining other founders and CEOs to do something.
Yeah.
And it's not the CEO thing that really matters, but that's it's a weird mix of people that we have. And people pick up things, and they're just they become the CEO of their own area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love having a bunch of CEOs around. So
Yeah. This idea of who you surround yourself with, it's so much easier to think, oh, I'm gonna just post a job or whatever, or find a body, but finding somebody that had owned the problem before, and enabling them in the way that you uniquely can. Rather, you uniquely can enable me to be this evangelist role in a certain way. For a property manager, you can uniquely enable somebody that either wants to have their construction business at some point, and you can make them head of maintenance, or wants to have a marketing business, and you can make them head of your marketing, or finding those kinds of people. I think that's a really, really big takeaway. And I think the property management world, as this matures and sees how well Vendoroo does, I think that's going to be part of the book.
people are so afraid to give something away, because they're like, what if I give this and they don't deliver on it? It will happen so many times, but eventually, if you operate that way, you will also get some people. When we spoke about partners, we're like, oh, how do we pick the right partner? I'm like, we could partner with anyone, and who cares? Some will be good. It doesn't matter, but eventually the outcome of it is that the people that works out it's going to work out incredibly well.
Yeah, and what I see in the way that you operate, I saw it on this couch not that long ago. I forgot what the context was, but oh yeah, Raj was over here. He's like, hey guys, I feel like I'm 5 steps behind here. Can you explain it to me? And you're like, wait, Raj, are you 5 steps behind and need to be explained? Or because my default is I'm 5 steps behind, but it sounds like you got it figured out. So go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
What are we explaining
I'm
here?
too freaking slow to get up to speed on this. So
and you can only do that with people that you own the outcome on, right? You don't have to understand everything, but if it you got somebody that you trust, you can then go, okay, cool, go do it and report.
We fundamentally operate on bets.
Yeah.
It's no, let's solve a problem. No, do you have a bet? Because if we don't have a bet, who's going to own the bet? We have no, so, and that's fundamental to it. I'm so behind on so many things here, but it is what it is. So cheers, man.
I like it, dude. You are somebody a self-described underdog that I feel has been punching at this ability to unleash your value into the world from a young age. The story that I was told was that your last company got to like about $100 million and you decided you want a bigger market size. That sounds fucking nuts to me. Tell me more about that.
Unleash my value to the world. I don't think everything starts with unleashing your value to the world.
Okay.
I think most things start with a bug, and it's okay. But I think as you evolve into who you become is way more important than how it started. I think most people obsess. I have to have the right reason to start this, to do this. It doesn't matter. Like, you're born, it doesn't matter. It's like what matters. Everyone celebrates the birth, but not like who they become. So to be frank, I Iranian born and raised, and then went to Australia, and I tried so hard to get into the U.S. I got rejected so many times. I actually got rejected by the U.K., Canada, U.S., and then so eventually, came to do my PhD at Harvard and did that, and then I think that I had, so much of that was proven a point. And frankly, I would say first couple of businesses was proven a point too. This idea of being ego driven versus mission driven, it takes a lot of maturity to get out of that.
Yeah.
And that's the journey that I've been on. I think that lack of power really mattered to me a lot, and that drove me a lot to just not to be powerful. I never cared to give a shit about power, but I just didn't want to have no power, and I didn't want to have no agency. It was a fear that was, and I always thought like, hey, why do you think the number one in like an Olympic race, the person who becomes number one, why do you think they become number one? It's because they're so scared of becoming number two. I really believe that. I think that operating that way, it was like me, and it takes you to an extent, but it doesn't get you. And I've been lucky enough to be around people that were way more successful than me, and I was like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
And I realized there's a big difference between desiring an outcome versus running away from an outcome. I don't think I was intending to unleash any value in the world previously. It was to prove a point. It was to run away from things, super ego driven. And I've been on a journey to get to this. So I am only interested in unleashing the value of the world. And actually, you could never buy me for egoistical reasons, but you can now never buy me if it impacts what I really care about doing.
How do you learn that, man? Like I've got my own version of that story of going from using my superpowers to serve myself to then turning it on and realizing that once I use my superpowers to serve the world, things accelerate for you. Right. But it came from like pain, right? It came from like a hitting a wall and feeling desperate that I was doing things wrong. What are the moments in your journey, like in building businesses, that allowed you to kind of like flip that mentality?
Yeah. Well, I think pain does it, but it may not be enough. And I'll give you an idea. I always thought like self-awareness is something that just needs time and a little bit of triggers. I was like, everyone's eventually gonna get there. And people around me were like, no, like that's not how it happens.
Yeah, no, not everybody gets there.
And that was a shock to me. I'm like, once you start digging in, like this is never ending. You're not gonna stop, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized, no, that's not really the case. So I think you need a few things in there. Pain helps. I don't think, you could become a victim very easily. You could get out of victimhood. So there's like, how do you get there? I think someone who's really curious and has a lot of pain, well, it's more likely to get there because you keep looking and the pain keeps fueling you, and then you keep looking. So I've been through a lot of pain. I've banged my head against a lot of walls.
Can you tell me some of those moments so this doesn't just sound like intellectual masturbation?
It does sound intellectual masturbation.
Which I know you hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have burnt a lot of bridges around me to realize why bridges need to be there.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so, like when you look at, in my first business, I was so center driven. And, we got to 10 million in revenue within 3 years, like really rapid growth. Through that journey, like your head becomes big. And you're like, oh my God, I did this. Like, and finally I proved a point. And so through that journey of your head getting big, then you become the center of the universe versus like making the mission and everything else the center of the universe. And people talk about it, but acting on it is very different. And how you treat the people around you is going to be impacted by that. It was until I hit a little dip in that journey that I realized that because of me being that way, I had attracted almost everyone around me was opportunistic. And maybe they weren't innately opportunistic, but
Yeah.
this is how I planted our relationship to be. And so they, and once they hit that dip, then, you start really feeling the pain of like, oh my God. And more importantly, you start going back to like, yeah, there's the why isn't strong enough. Like when we talked about the vision,
Yeah.
I was like, let's be bloody clear because we're going to waste a lot of money on this and we're going to lose, more important than money, we're going to spend a lot of man hours on this.
Yeah.
And hey, Pablo, like your man hours is your life. Like, is this really worth towards this, like why and towards this, what we're doing. Right. So, yeah.
I like how you phrase it. You kind of phrased it as you reap what you sow, right? Like you were planting these transactional relationships that then became these transactional things, and it didn't endure in the way that it should, in the way that you want to build a business that way. And as I see you now, the way that you've treated me since the moment that you hired me as like an outside agency to like trying to convince me to come on board and do this thing, I see you as somebody that is very purposefully planting these relationships around. You're kind of punching around at like, hey, what is it that this guy really, really cares about? And then how can I speak to him in those terms? How do I find ways to enable him in those moments that shows that I am like aware of what matters to him?
Yeah.
And for me, it's how can I, not just make it cool to like Vendoroo, right? Like not do what you hired me to be the pull marketer, right? Like to want people to want to enroll. And I love that. I love starting a movement. I love doing those things, category design, all this stuff, like being an evangelist. But it's also, culture is really important to me. How people treat people interpersonally is very important to me. So I noticed that you started calling me on things of like, hey man, so I want to talk to somebody about this thing. How would you talk to him about it, right? Like those little things to me are the
Yeah.
are the signals of, oh, okay, this guy's building more than a transactional relationship with me when he's trying to involve me in other things and show that we're truly like in this thing together all the way around, right? Like, do you do that systematically? Like, how do you, like give some advice on, I'm a property manager. I feel like maybe I have attracted some of the wrong people and I have some of the right people too, right?
Yeah.
But like, what are the things to kind of like look out for in order to like plant those seeds so they're not transactional, so that you're building this like vision that can really grow?
Let me just I'll really try to simplify it, but in my pain is so sellable that what I would have previously done is expected dedication from you. Now I want immersion. So and that creates a night and day. And it works until it doesn't. Dedication works until it doesn't. And you're like, keep pushing, and that it's so easy to sell pain. Like, the whole discipline, pain, particularly guys. It's like it's very easy to sell. Like,
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah, yeah.
nah, are you like you're like,
You soft?
you soft? Like
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
keep
yeah.
going. Like
Yeah,
you need more pain. Push, push,
yeah,
push, 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 and it's really easy to attract that around you
yeah,
by doing that. But when you realize, and I've used this example to you, the difference is building a bullet versus building a snowball. And a bullet, like Reza, you still get successful, but you get capped out on your success in a bullet.
yeah,
Like, but if you have a great vision, your vision and you're trying to go through it at a like a bullet, you're just hitting a concrete wall. And it's until you go back and you learn how to immerse yourself with yourself and the people around you. And it's not dedication. It's not expecting that from someone. It's like, can I immerse this person into the snowball? And this snowball keeps rolling down, keeps getting momentum. And it hits a point where like you become small in that snowball. It's a weird feeling. Like in my last business, I was getting bigger. I was going from a CEO of like the small company to now having 100 people in that company, right? I was becoming bigger. I feel smaller in the snowball as it rolls, and it feels so different, and it feels incredible. But the snowball is rolling, and it's getting bigger, and it's getting bigger, and that's why it's more about when you view it from the point of serving. It means every interaction has to be serving. Um, and so yeah, and it becomes more about serving you to join this mission, to see how valuable it is to be part of a snowball that you're becoming smaller and smaller in, versus hiking a mountain and you going at the top and you're using tools and mechanisms and people to get you there.
From demanding dedication to creating immersion and immersing. And instead of trying to become bigger, trying to become smaller inside of a snowball that continues to grow around you.
Exactly.
I like that, man. I like that as a philosophy. I want to talk about another philosophy of yours. Yesterday you said opportunism comes from small vision. And when I heard that, what I thought about that really relates to property managers is this idea that we're going through this giant context change, right? Wall Street coming into the space and the affordability crisis and all this stuff has created a different expectation from like the world is judging property management differently. The intergenerational wealth transfer of going from these owners of these homes and properties being boomers to being millennials has changed the customer expectation. And now AI is coming into the mix, and AI is evolving rapidly. There's a new generation of AI, Agentic AI, and what I see in these moments of great change always come with a context shift that creates a new missing, and that missing is either there is a new problem that just got created because everything changed. So now there's a new problem that nobody's talked about yet and nobody's really identified, or this old problem that used to be a cost of doing business is now completely solvable because there's a new solution because of this change. And that's like what requires the innovation. And in these moments, right, and I think about Netflix versus Blockbuster, I think about Toys R Us versus Amazon, I think about cab companies versus Uber. In these moments, the things that people in it recognize that things are changing, and they're not wanting to innovate. But what you see over and over again is that the people that become the winners, the Amazons, the Ubers, the Netflixes, they win because they adapted to the new, they built based on the new future as opposed to like what the past was before. And the people that lose don't lose because they don't feel like trying new things and they don't see something coming. They lose because they are too attached to the past, and past successes as being proof that they're doing well, than to be like, no, no, we're in this new reality. Like we're in this new reality. Let's build for this new reality. And the way that I tell property managers this is, if I'm I'm an emerging property manager, I'm chopping at the bit for using all these native tools that are AI native and agents, and I'm like demanding that my property management system, if it's not natively built AI, it's at least open so I can plug in as many things as possible. So I can go challenge the incumbent. And if I'm the incumbent, I'm pulling in my partners and saying, hey, if we were to rebuild today, what would that look like? And how do we get there right now as quickly as possible? Right? And that to me is this idea of like opportunism comes from small vision, that the emerging property manager is their opportunity is in the small vision of the incumbent, thinking that the future is going to be more like the past than the future's changed. What did you mean by this idea of opportunism comes from small vision?
There's a lot of data points to point to people making decisions that will lead to short-term outcomes, and it's those are very sellable too. Like, it sounds like having 10 million in revenue is incredible for a business, right? But that sounds so small to me, like right now. Even getting there within 3 years, people are like, oh, I mean, it sounds so small to me, right? So, it's just how you perceive and the perspective that you have on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think the opportunity for property managers is, when you age, when you look at like someone who's a little bit older and they're not changing as much, people are like, oh, look, that person's age, like they're not changing, and they become less relevant. It's not because they aged. It's because the things around them changed
Yeah.
and they didn't adapt to it.
Yeah.
But like if you're in property management today and you're 50 years old, 60 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, you have the opportunity right now to rebuild another like 20 to 30 years. And that's the opportunity for me. And so if your vision for yourself is this and like, I just needed to do this for another 5 years and I'll be done. And what I'm seeing, like, I don't know if you know, but we're expected, the life expectancy by the time we get to like dying is expected to be, the average in the US is expected to be well above 100,
Well above
110.
Yeah.
So like most people like are planning their life around dying around like 80, and like you have another 30, 40 years by the time we get there. And so it's too long to be behind. It's too long to be an 80-year-old in 2060 or 20 whatever 2050.
Yeah.
It's too long to stay there. So the opportunity is that like the change is coming, and it's not just top down, it's bottom up.
Yeah.
The market's been, I'm actually, this, but I'm less interested in this industrial top down discussions. It's very executive talk.
Yeah.
I'm interested in like my experience bottom up to the consumers, and finally there's something that's going to give them that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's finally coming, right? And I think a lot of this stuff is bottom up, and there's an opportunity for everyone to join that.
Yeah.
To, buy another 20, 30 years on like, just living a little longer, right? So, yeah, that's what I think of that.
So what do you think? What do you think in, let's call it 2030, right? In 5 years, what does this industry look like? Like, right? AI continues to do its thing. Vendoroo is successful, and it's not the only one that's successful. Other people unlock this like agentic thing across multiple things. We are at that point more than a quarter into the great generational wealth transfer, right? That's something that's going to happen over the next 20 years. And you're looking around at the property management space. What is, let's go market by market, right? Like you're in Houston. What does the property management ecosystem in Houston look like in 2030, or what could it look like? What's your vision of that?
Yeah. I like, there's, there's been a lot of consolidation that's been trying to happen, and people thought that we're going to consolidate quicker. So one is like what's going to happen to property management. The other question is like what's going to happen to rentals. What are like,
Okay.
There's a lot of like movements that's happening
Yeah.
on that front. But like instead of like again getting into the discussions of what the future looks like, no one knows what the future is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, but here's what's guaranteed: there will be a lot more options.
Yeah.
And what happens when there's more options is that typically, there's, you start with 2 options and there are 10 options. And yeah, with time, some of those options die, but it's very unusual. This never happens where people go back to the first option. Never happens. Like when Uber came out, like, yeah, is a taxi still around? Is taxis are still around, but there's an option that's added. And there's multiple options in that scenario, but it's just like it never goes back to the first option.
Yeah. Cabs are more like Uber than Uber is like cabs these days.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So that's what's going to property management is going to look like. Right now, the market's got two choices: property management, no property management. and what it's going to look like, there's going to be 10 options. And the reality is that your all options very likely in 5 to 6 years, 7 years is not going to be, it may still be but in 10 years, it's definitely not the dominant option. And so that's how things get chipped away. And there will still be a client base that still works with you, 100%. But 5 years, it's going to be a lot less. 10 years, it's going to be way less. That's how
That's a good take. That's a good take, man. That was my thinking was much more simple around it. Anything else, man? Is there anything else that you said you haven't done a lot of these podcasts?
I've never done one.
Anything else that you've been thinking? This is your first podcast?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, look at that, look at that, buddy. You do great so far. Anything else? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man. I just feel grateful to be able to chat with you. Honestly,
Yeah.
I feel grateful that we're here. This is like a freaking blessing.
This is cool. Yeah, we're in a houseboat, and we're in the biggest houseboat in London, doing our strategic offsite for 2025.
It's incredible.
It's been pretty cool. It's been pretty cool.
I feel really grateful, and I'm just excited for the future. So that's it.